Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's really a pleasure, and we're going to have a lot of fun today, because today is the Shabbat Tzav and Shabbat Hagadol. It's always Shabbat before Pesach. We prepare some point regarding to the Torah portion, and main point about this great observance of Passover. This year it's a little different than the other years. We're not going to have tests today. We're not going to have quiz today, but we're going to have a lot of fun today. So before we go to our materials, let me just glance over the parsha to make 1 or 2 points from the parsha. The first point I would like to make is about the prohibition against drinking blood. The Torah portion of Tzav speaks about the importance of the prohibition that apply not only the Jewish faith but also to the general universal seven Noahide law, which is a prohibition against drinking blood to everyone. Not just that, it's a mitzvah in those, especially in the ancient time, to sacrifice it on the altar, which is one of the interesting things that happened in some of those sacrifices. You're not allowed to leave anything out. You have to, even the fat or whatever left over, you need to burn it. So it was a great rabbi. We discussed his name many times. His name is Abarbanel, one of the rabbis that was forced out at 1492 from Spain. He wrote in his commentary on Leviticus, and he said that blood and fat, it's a symbol. And it's a sentence that said, "Im yu chata'echem kashani, kashe legalbinu." If your sin will be like tremendous red in that sense, and they will be like a snow, white like a snow. So blood is red, and chelev, meaning fat, it's white, that whatever left. So so he has said that there is a symbolic reason. It's more than just the act himself, because in nowadays there's no temple, there's no offering, it's just lip service, is a substitute in our lips. So I would like to share with you the Maimonides in the famous book Guide for the Perplexed, which was late in his life book. Very fascinating book, very controversial book, but he tried to deal with ta'amei mitzvot, explanation of the mitzvah, and he said that the reason for that is the health reason, the reason for this prohibition. But he elaborated a little bit on that. He said it's not health in the sense of drinking blood is unhealthy only, it's something much deeper. And he said that the other nations, especially in the ancient time, they used to do a lot of idol worshipping, and those nations used to do it for reasons. So let me read it in Hebrew, and I try to translate what exactly the Rambam said to do justice to the text. He said it in chapter 46, the third book of the guide, and he said, "Veda, and you shall know, hadam hu tameh me'od b'nei hachaba." The blood is very impure in the eye of Chaba. Chaba was one of those like those worship idols in ancient time. It was a different katot. It was different group of people that did all kind of cult and ritual things, crazy things. You have it nowadays in many ways, like KKK and all kind of crazy groups that does all kind of crazy things. So that was that group that they used to worship idol in those days. So im kol ze hayu ochlim oto. So after they did all these crazy rituals, they used to eat it and drink it, which is for sure disgusting. Bechoshvam shehu mazon hashedim. In the ancient time, it was a very strong belief in a ghost and the demons and all kind of things like that. And they believed in those days that that was part of fitting those ancient crazy demons and disgusting goats and things. So they want to be like those entities, so they used to do that. כשאכל אותו, מי שאכלו השתתף עם השדים. The Rambam said that whoever ate it, he felt that he is partaking of those demons and ghosts. ויבואו ויודיעו עתידות. And the purpose for that is that by knowing that, he will become a clairvoyance, a prophet, will be able to know the future. והיו שם אנשים, and it was some of those people, שהיה קשה בעיניהם אכילת אדם, that it was hard for them this concept of drinking blood, כי הוא דבר שמעשה הוא טבע האדם. Because normal person, nature of normal person is to look as a disgusting, to drink blood. So what did they do? והיו שוחטים בהמה, they used to slaughter animal, ומקבלים דמה בכלים, they used to take a special utensil and put the blood in those utensils, או בחפירה, or by cutting part, ואוכלים בשר השחיטה, and then they eat those disgusting meat, סביב דמה. So in other words, it's like a sauce nowadays. They put the sauce for that disgusting meat with the sauce of the blood. והיו מדמים במעשים ההם, and they imagine, it's hard for us to comprehend ancient thinking, but they imagine in those acts, שהשדים יאכלו אדם, אשר הוא מזונם, because the ghost and all these crazy entities, the demons, etc., they are the entities that are drinking blood. והם יאכלו בשר, so we'll eat the meat, they will drink the sauce, and then we are partners, so they're going to, ובזה תהיה אהבה, and this way we'll build a love relationships. האחווה והרעות להם, we have a very strong connectedness between, connection between them and us. בעבור שאכלו כולם על שולחן אחד ובמושב אחד, because everybody was sitting around the one table and drinking and eating together. ויבואו להם השדים ההם, and those entities will come upon them, right? לפי מחשבתם בחלום, and the next thing in the next vision or dream, those entities will come to them, ויגלו להם עתידות ויועילו להם, and they come and tell them what's the future hold, and it will help them to conduct their lives. So all these crazy things, the Rambam said, that happened in the ancient time, it's a well-known in that time, and basically the Torah wants to make it very clear and prohibited any type of eating, drinking in that sense of blood, and they use a very strong language. The Torah not only forbid it, the Torah used the word Venatati panai banefesh haochel adam. The Almighty said that I bring, in our language, my face upon, I pin my wrath, my anger upon the person who's eating blood. And it's in that sense, it's a very strong language, very strong prohibition. The Nachmanides, who, as you know, we talk about him many times, he was born 9 years after the Rambam passed. He brings this famous explanation, but he said, I agree with Maimonides philosophically, but I do not see it in the text itself. And he said that it's a different reasons. He holds that the prohibition is because God created the earthly world for the purpose of man's needs, for the purpose of maintaining the world. And because God knew each one of his creatures, at the beginning he allowed only eat vegetations, nothing to do with meat. Like in the beginning of Genesis, they said you have to eat only. And then after the great flood, so he allowed the sons of Noah to have this. So all of that was a certain restriction by force of circumstance. But it's a certain limitation in a sense, since the Creator knew what's good. So at the first glance, animals is not good at all, because in our language, especially those of us who are animal lovers, it's like one day I have a long talk with my youngest daughter, and I said to her, you know, you want to have a hot dog, so it's only one thing I'm going to do it. I'm going to take you to one of those manufacturers. You're going to see exactly how they make it, and if you still want it, then we talk. So the point is that he holds that because God created in a certain way, he knows what is really good for a person. Nachmanides go further, that he said that basically blood is in a sense of atonement, in a sense of it's called the animal soul, the part of the body that involved with the nature instinct, and therefore you cannot combine this blood with our blood, because in a sense we are the people who receive the Torah, we are the spiritual, we are holy people, etc., etc., and we should, whatever you eat, it's somehow represent your heart, and our soul should be a soul full of compassion and mercy. And the minute you deal with this type of thing, something contaminating your soul and created within yourself some type of cruelty and some types of improper behavior, because it's filled up your intestine, and it's a correlation between the mind and body. So and because God doesn't want us to be like wild animals in the jungle, but to be proper mensch, proper people, so that's the reason why it's prohibited. So as I said, it's just a little point from the Parsha. Now we're going to our business, which is a little bit dealing with upcoming Passover. And as you know, that this Shabbat is a Shabbat Hagadol. It's a great Shabbat, and there are several reasons why it's called Shabbat Hagadol. The key reason is because the great miracle happened on this Shabbat. The great miracle was, it's in the Bible, the Torah said that God commanded Moses to tell the people that they should take the Egyptians' god and slaughter it at the front of the Egyptians, and prepare it and take the sprinkle of the blood and put it around the doorpost. And the miracle was that it was Egyptian god, and this is their slaves, and they were paralyzed and didn't do anything, and that was the Shabbat, the Saturday before the time that they went out of Egypt. So because of the great miracle, and you see in the Haggadah so many miracles happen, so that's the key reason why it's called Shabbat Hagadol. There are other reasons which we'll see later. So the first point we want to, I'd like to share with you is just some definition, some concept. Number one is the idea of chametz. The idea of chametz, the Talmud said in Pesachim, page 5, they said that the idea of chametz is any 5 species of grain that puff up when moisture with water. Which means that in order to create something that it's a unleavened versus leavened bread, you need to go the same process, but you have to exceed it more than 18 minutes. Soon you see how. But the whole idea that the minutes that it's moisture with water and puff up, then it's called chametz. So why do we have to define chametz? The reason it's because, so we know what not to eat on Pesach, because that's an important border, the minutes that they puff up. The 5 species of grain are wheat, spelt, oat, barley, and rye, because each one of these, basically when they combine with moisture with water, they puff up. Unlike, and this is a common mistake, unlike rice and things like that, that it create an odor, but it's not puffing up in the same manner, and it's not maintained of grain. The Torah said it in several places, but the well-known places in our parsha, in Vayikra, chapter 7, sentence 23, that via negativa, they talk about the prohibition of eating chametz. Number 5, which is the example of chametz that's made of 5 species of grain? That is just an example. It's bread, cookie, biscuit, some of the whiskey, beer, all of that. It's contained either fully or partially chametz. Okay. The reason that we not allow, it's not rabbinic and it's not a nice minhag, it's because the Torah forbids it. But within the chametz, there are different type, which can be just a visible chametz, like biscuit, that you know, like bread, that it's clear chametz, or beer, okay, yeast or some flours. It can be also mixture that contain chametz and not chametz. It's called ta'arovet. Not only in a sense of liquid as a whiskey, but you can have chametz as like chametz nuksher, which is a stale bread, or you can have some, even a food supplement that contains some percentage of grain within that product, which is a problem in Passover because it's combined some grain. It's also important to know that chametz lo yadua, which the Mishnah Berurah said in a Taf Mem Zayin, very important Mishnah Berurah. He said chametz lo yadua, which means chametz that we're not aware of, that is there and we're not familiar with. It's something that we should always be concerned, because the Torah not only forbids us, that's a common mistake, not only forbids us to drink or eat, the Torah also forbids us to have it in our midst. which means we're also responsible if there is a chametz in our midst. We are basically violating even we're not eating it. Now, the holiday of Passover carries several names. The name that we all know, it's for sure Pesach, right? Pesach, it's like Passover, right? God skipped over the houses of the people of Israel during the plague of the firstborn, and then because of that it's called Pesach. But they have other names, which is Chag HaMatzot, the holiday of the Matzot, Chag HaCherut, the festival of liberation and freedom, and also Chag HaAviv, the holiday of spring. And that's the reason why always the Jewish calendar follows that Passover is around springtime. So some years you have 2 Adarim, leap year, in order to make sure that it's fulfillment what the Torah said, the holiday of spring, which is Chag HaAviv. Now let's go a little deeper. Since we mentioned different names for Passover, the next question is, why is Pesach called the holiday of Matzot, the Chag HaMatzot? What's the reason? So the first reason is simple, because we eat the matzot on Passover, right? But there is another reason, and it's because the people of Israel left Egypt in a hurry, and there was no time for their dough to leaven. So therefore we eat matzot. That's part of what the Torah tells us in the book of Exodus. So how was the dough baked that was taken by the people of Israel when they left Egypt? So the Torah said that they in that time, which is very important, they built ovens for themselves when they arrived at a place called Sukkot. And since there was a small amount of dough, it baked it in the sun's heat. And remember, that's a very high temperature because it's a hot desert, okay? And until Pharaoh sent them away, they baked the dough in the oven quickly. But during the night of the plague of the firstborn, they prepare the provisions and bake the dough. And because everything was in a rush, that's what happened. For those who are more advanced, the source for that is not only in the Exodus 12, it's also Abu Draham interpretation for that text. The next one is in the Siddur. If you look carefully, follow the Chumash, the Passover is called Zman Simchatenu, time of our joy, of our liberation, in the prayer. So the reason for that, it's because on Pesach people were released from Egypt, which was slavery. How many years do you remember? 210 years. It was originally 400 years, but then it was reduced to 210. The purpose of liberation, the Torah tells us, when you free people from Egypt, the only purpose is that they worship God in a mountain, which is something very important in Jewish faith. That the reason God took us out of Egypt is only because we accept the yoke of Torah. In other words, if it wasn't upcoming event, which is the acceptance of the Torah, is no logical reason, is no reason for God to take us out of slavery. That's very important core of our faith in Judaism. And therefore, when a Jew observes the Torah, he is referred to as a ben chorin, a free man. The Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Father, said there is no free person like one who is involved in the Torah. So that's the reason why it's called Zman Cherutenu, the time of our liberation. Another name we mentioned earlier, it's called Chag HaAviv, the holiday of spring. Why it's called the holiday of spring? So in the book of Dvarim, Deuteronomy, they said, the Torah states that the holiday falls on the month of spring. And as we said, it has to occur in the month of spring, and that's the reason why we call that name. Now, why did God specifically take out the people of Israel in the month of spring, in the Chodesh HaAviv? So the reason for that is because it was a pleasant weather. It's neither hot nor cold, and it's night time to get out. So it shows us that Rashi said on that portion of Shmot that God is not just a good God and a God omnipresent and compassionate, but He's also make sure what He has a mass production of people that coming out of slavery, that they have a pleasant weather, so they'll be able to go in a way at peace for a huge change in their lives. So since we said that Passover, for all the festival of the years, As you know, the most observant festival is the festival of Passover. I heard once from Rabbi Wein, one that I admire greatly, who said that when he was a rabbi in Miami Beach, he now already retired, but he said that one time he get a congregant that asked him, was a teacher, and he wants a rabbi to write a letter over the festival of Shavuot, that they should let him come to shul and absent from teaching. So he sent a letter, and the chairman of the Board of Education called him and said, Rabbi, I got your letter, but I really don't understand. I know about Passover and it's on the calendar, but I don't know where is this festival of Shavuot and what is this on the calendar. And he said, the Rabbi Wein explained to him, and he said, I asked all the Jews around this department, no one heard about this festival. So it's going to show you that of all observant, including people who are never come to shul for Yizkor and Yom Kippur or Kol Nidra and Yom Kippur, they have some level of observant and Passover. So for all the festival, this is the most observant festival in any level, in all different levels. So there are many mitzvot involved in Passover. It's not just the joy of festival, it's many mitzvot. So the main mitzvah, it's the idea of bi'ur chametz, in preparation of Passover, destroying the chametz. Okay, that it's to clean the house, to prepare and destroy the chametz, and the mitzvah of achilat matzah, to eat the matzah at least at the first night of Passover. Okay? There are additional mitzvot to that one, which is obligation to eat matzah on the night of Seder, and obligation to celebrate the first night of Passover and observe all these special mitzvot. What is the additional mitzvot? So they said that during the time of the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, it was a special offering. It's called Pesach offering, Korban Pesach. That was a sacrifice at the middle day of the 14th of Nisan. And during the time of the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, it was the Omer, the measure of harvest grain, from the barley of the first harvest that brought to the Beit HaMikdash on the second day of Passover. And we start the Sfirat HaOmer, counting the Omer, at the second day of the Passover. That's a famous Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvot. Was the Korban Pesach, the Passover offering, sacrificed only at the 14th of Nisan, the eve of Pesach, or more? So it's a very well-known point that the proper time was the 14th of Nisan, but the Torah allow a second chance for those people who are impure. And in the time of the temple, what people are grouped in a family in Yerushalayim and in Jerusalem and eat their lamb meat, which is called Korban Pesach, and later conduct their Seder there. There's a very famous Rambam. Does everyone permitted to eat from that special offering? So they said the number of people from every family were to eat, they count in advance, and a non-Jew who was not circumcised, the way that the Torah described it, he needs, in order for the person to be part of the Korban Pesach, he needs to have those restrictions follow in order to eat that special offering in the ancient time. The matzah, there are many types and different things when it comes to matzah. So the matzah, in a very general term, is a thin baked product made solely out of wheat flour, and one that is not leavened. Meaning, the moment the matzah exceeded the 18 minutes border, which is the time that we measure to start puffing up, then is no longer considering kosher matzah. You can have matzah to eat all year round that is chometz, but matzah kasher for Passover, and there is a different type of matzah. There is a round, there is a square matzah. The Torah said that ugot, which is the baked unleavened cake of the dough. So Rashi explained that the word ugot, it's a round shape. And here you entered the domain of the round shape of the matzah. In general, they say that the round shape is make it quicker than square one, especially at that time, which is the precursor to making the matzah. The matzah bread is the bread of poverty. So the circle allowed the idea of the nature of wealth and poverty in the world, that it's ups and downs. It's a symbol. And because of the Seder night always falls on the 14th of the month of Nisan, and Tisha B'Av, the most day of sorrow, the 9 of Av, it's always the same time. Both days follow the same day of the week. Therefore, we eat round matzah to recall the food of the morning, which symbolize the cycle of life. So there are serious reasons. This is, by the way, Shalot Shuvot Yudayaled. It's a very famous explanation that's the reason of round. But I must add to that when it's come to Shmura Matzah, in nowadays, there are many who hold that the square matzah are much stricter in the process of the preparation of the machine and self-cleaning. Yet, the Hasidic group are more with the tradition of round matzah. As far as the Mehadrin Kashrut, the square matzah is at least the same as the round matzah in the level of Kashrut. There are some people who combine. There are some people who eat square matzah only the first days, and then they're doing Chol HaMoed the square matzah, etc. Is matzah known by other names? So the answer is, in the Torah it's referred as a bread of poverty. And that's important for people to be aware that as much as matzah it's a nice thing, that's a huge difference between our celebration and other celebrations. Because in the other faith celebrations, they Independence Day, they do all kind of showing off. In our day of celebration, we take a bread of poverty, and we say that's the day that we are celebrate. So it's huge matzah. The matzah eaten on the first night is called matzat mitzvah. It's a special mitzvah the first night, and the matzah made exclusively by hand is called the hand matzah. And versus that square matzah or machine matzah that it's made by machine. As we said, it's a famous techemet. Basically, the idea of square matzah in the modern machine, the way that they made it with all the cleaning process and involvement, because each and every time when you bake you need to clean up everything. It's a very sophisticated, good way that the new machine made, and make those square matzah really kosher lamehadrin, kosher shemura, the highest level. What does the name lechem oni, the bread of poverty, mean? The Torah use it. So the Talmud said in Pesachim 35, the Talmud said that plain food made only of flour with no other additives, that's called lechem oni, bread of poverty. And matzah shmura, guarded matzah, means that matzah that is made from wheat that was guarded from the time of harvest. It's called mishat ktsira, so it does not come in contact with any water. It's very important when you see prices in the store for different matzot, you should know the difference. It's not just the owner wants to make money. It's the idea that there are different matzot in different process. If you watch from the time they're planting the seed that is not come in contact with a certain temperature, a certain water, mishat ktsira, it costs most money because the process is much expensive than the other matzot. Just an example. Matzah bilti shmura, unguarded matzah that's not supervised to prevent leavening, but only from the time of kneading and not from the time of harvest, and therefore the price is different. It's a very famous Shulchan Aruch Harav in Taf Nun Gimel that said that when it's come to this, that we should be stricter to go to the time of harvest. And that's the reason why you see the Chabad Hasidim, the Lubavitch Hasidim, that they are very strict with matzah. They go from the time of harvest strictly for the entire Passover when they eat matzah. So now you may ask, is it permissible to eat non-shemua matzah on Pesach? Is that like chametz in any way? So the answer is yes, because it's still matzah that's kosher for Passover. And on the first night we try to be strict about eating matzah shmura, because as you know in the Torah the first night has the most emphasis in a sense. But as long as it's bless you, as long as it's kosher, it's fine. How is the hand matzah made? The process it's different, and you should be aware of that. The dough is made from wheat and mayim shelanu meaning that it's made out of the water that was supervised overnight. And before the kneading, we said l'shem matzat mitzvah. We said that that's for the purpose of the matzat mitzvah. And low temperature is maintained when the dough is prepared. And care is taken not to let the 18 minutes pass, which is the time it takes for dough to leaven, from the time the water was poured until after the baking. So that's a famous Maharil that he explained in the Hilchot Tikkun HaMatzot how they should make. And Mayim Shelanu, that's the special water, is the idea that water was taken from the city main faucet, and it's a certain process that they make this. And we are careful to knead the dough specifically with water that stay overnight, which is called lanu, and because the water is cooler than the tap water. Now, there is a different matzah that we use at the first night. It's called matzat mitzvah, matzah of the commandment. And that's applied to the 3 matzot baked on the 14th of Nisan. My late father-in-law, who was the chief rabbi of Shomron, he used to be very strict with that, to make matzat mitzvah on the eve of Passover, with all the other obligation, which is to daven, to do the siyum of the tractate, to burn the chametz, and to do all the community needs. He, at the top of that, during the day, bake in a small bakery, local bakery, a 3-hand matzah that he used for the 3 matzah on the first eve of Passover. Why is forbidden to taste the matzah on the eve of Passover? Basically, the Rambam in Choshen Mishpat, Perek Vav, and Rokeach also explained it. He said that when it's come that on the poskim, the rabbinic decisions cite that the matzah are major mitzvah, and the Seder night they should not be eating earlier, so the matzah is fulfilled on time, and the eating of matzah is parallel to Korban Pesach. Since we don't have a sacrificial offering of Passover, so what do we do instead of that? We eat in the right time. So the same applies to matzah. The matzah should be eating hardly at night, so one eats it before, he will not have such an appetite for that. And the Torah said clearly, you shall eat unleavened bread in the evening. So from here we learn that the appropriate time of eating matzot starts at night. So you see the whole idea of special preparations, and therefore you should be enthusiastic and hungry to eat the matzah, and therefore you either should not eat or you should eat something else in a small amount during the day. Most of the rabbis hold, we said it many times, so from about the mid of the day until the time of the Seder, you should not eat, or you can have some nash or something, but basically you should teach everyone to go to the Seder with a great hunger and great enthusiasm in order to eat the matzah. Is the eating a matzah of mitzvah for the entire 7 days of Pesach? That's a famous question, because there are some people who don't like matzah, there are some people who have a hard time to eat it the whole week. So the Torah said in Shmot, in Exodus, the Torah said in chapter 12, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. So we learn that it's an obligatory to eat matzah during the 7 days of the holidays. In the Devarim, in the Deuteronomy, the Torah said, for 6 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day you shall hold the solemn gathering. So we learn that it is only obligatory to eat matzah during the first 6 days. But the sages teach us, that's a famous Tosfot in the Tractate Psachim 120a, so it said that just as eating matzah on the 7th day is not non-compulsory, it is also non-compulsory during the days of Chol HaMoed, the intermediary day, and therefore the mitzvah of eating matzah is only compulsory on the first day. So in other words, during the 6 days of Chol HaMoed, if you want to, you can, and if you want to enter meat, and you are forbidden to eat chametz, but the obligation is at the first day, the first night, the first day, right? Which mitzvah? You see why it's important for us to meet sometimes, right? Why mitzvah do we observe? Which mitzvah do we observe with each of these 3 matzot? So we make the blessing al achilat matzah and hamotzi, right? The top matzah. We break the middle matzah of yachatz, and it's eating with the afikoman, and the bottom matzah we use for korech. You see it in most of the Agadot, these instructions. So what are machine matzot? Machine matzah, the matzah that bake only by machine, and it's fine as long as it's make it proper way. There is a concept in Passover that you hear it many times, it's called matzah shruya. Matzah shruya, meaning that got wet with water. Passover is the festival of the machmirim, of the stringencies. So Aruch HaShulchan in Orach Chaim, Siman Taf Samech Aleph, the Aruch HaShulchan explained that the matzah that gets wet with the water it's sometimes problematic, because when it gets wet with the water, it's a potential to puff up. If it's not hot, it's a question. But so there is a problem with eating matzah shruya, because there is only problem with regard to the first. The problem it's applied exclusively to Hasidim, because the Hasidic movement, the Hasidim are very strict with this, and the minute they got connected with the water, they have a fear that it will puff up. Some extreme I saw many years ago. I was a guest in some house, and one of the kids put in the hot soup a little matzah, and the mother came in and threw out the soup. So again, there are people who go to the extreme, but basically the whole idea is that when it's contact with the water, if you see the Shulchan Aruch Harav, he wrote about it, that it's an issue. So why do we practice caution with regard to matzah shruya? So the reason, since wheat flour becomes chametz when it comes into contact with water, the Hasidic movement, the Hasidim, took upon themselves as additional restriction to be cautious on Pesach about eating matzah that came with the contact with water. Now, if you have a marriage couple with a different custom, different traditions, then it's come a question when, for example, a married woman, you hear it constantly, who come from the home which her parents did not eat matzah shruya, matzah that sometimes combined with water, and her husband is not careful about eating matzah shruya, so she should follow her husband's, or she should follow the parents, what she should do. So the Shulchan Aruch, the code, said in a few places, he said that she should perform the Hatarat Nedarim, which is dissolution of a vow, and then she'll be able to eat matzah shruya the way that her husband does. So for example, if he's a Sephardi and he allowed to have rice and beans, so she can make this annulment or dissolution of vow, and then she can follow their husband's customs. When a husband and wife come from family of different Pesach minhagim, we basically try to policy that wife should adopt the practice of a husband's family if it's a permanent situation. But in general, when a husband practices several personal customs that his wife does not practice in her previous home, so basically the wife in general accepting the husband custom, as long as it's not a personal non-established chumrah, non-established stringencies that especially the Rav Feinstein in the Igrot Moshe and Rav Ovadia, they said that he cannot impose on her. He has all kind of super restrictions that he brought from home. So now, regarding to immigrants, when immigrants permanently reside in U.S. and they are from community with different Pesach customs, for example, if you have Iranian Jews and European Jews, okay, so each one follow the practice of a homeland, but the late Rabbi Feinstein rules that U.S. it's a land of immigrants, so it's no such a thing a custom of the community. So if there's no such a thing of a custom of the community, so can each one of them follow the custom of the land. But when the U.S. citizen make aliyah and then change his mind and return here, for example, so he has to celebrate 2 days of Chag as Americans. Okay? Now, why is eating chametz forbidden on Pesach? We said that to recall the miracle of Exodus. Now, following the Torah commandment of Pesach, at what time period preceding our Pesach, the sages instruct us not to eat chametz. So basically, the sages said that commencing from the 5 hours after sunrise, that's basically the time that we should not eat chametz. So basically, you should go by the luach, the time that it's written in the luach, in the calendar, and that's the time, the latest time that you can eat chametz. And you see it in the bulletin that we distribute the proper time, or you go on the website that David graciously involves so beautifully, and they give the zmanim, some of us, some they taken from Chabad. It's a very beautiful idea that you know exactly the time, proper time, how long you can eat, what the time of lighting candles, etc., etc. Because, for example, if you light candles, it's already holiday. Imagine it's the eve of Yom Kippur, it's already dark, and it's now a violation, so you're not just doing mitzvah. So the sense is you have to go by the zmanim, by the time that it's... now, some question that people ask about koshering utensils for Passover. So there is a very important concept in Shulchan Aruch that said that it's called kebolo kach polto. What is the kebolo kach polto? It's a very important concept. Utensils that used for absorption process can be kosher by using the same methodology on a rejection process. So if you have a microwave and it absorbs certain things, it can reject it the same way. So even we talk about milk and meat issues. So if you put a cup with water and it's boiled and you see a little smoke coming out, what happens is that whatever you don't see in your eyes, but it's absorbed in the microwave, it can dissolve outside in that the same process, because the same way it's absorbed, it rejects. So that's the apply to koshering appliances, self-cleaning machines, microwaves, etc. There is only one type of vessels that cannot be kosher on Passover, and that is porcelain or clay, because this is the only materials, those China porcelain or things like that, it's only absorb but cannot reject.
So wood.
You cannot use it. If you use it for chametz, you cannot use it for...
I know.
So I have a friend, for example, he became a mashgiach in, I think it was a Hilton in New Jersey. So they wanted to kosher the kitchen. So they came to him and show him all these fancy plates. And he explained to them that they, it's an issue and they cannot use them, because the minute you use it for non-kosher, unlike others, like for example glass or plastic or iron or other product, that you can use this process the same way as absorb, it can reject. You put it in a hot temperature of water, it can reject whatever it's absorbed, even you don't see it. That's not applied to porcelain or clay, because it's only absorbed and not rejected.
So you should sell those type of vessels?
It's a good question. Basically, when it's come to kashrut, you need to break it and get rid of them. But if you want to use it all year round and not for Passover,
right,
so you close it in a special section, you put it's non for Passover, you don't need to sell, because you don't selling chametz.
Okay.
But basically, the minute you sell chametz, is applied to product that you're selling. But you can put it in a closet in a special location, put a sign, and it's basically it's not for Passover, but to use it, for example, in a kashrut issues, the minute it's used for non-kosher, this is one of the things that you have to break. You cannot fix, you cannot kosher, because it's only absorb and not reject.
Right.
So now you ask a question, what about koshering a oven for Passover? You see, Passover, it's easy festival. You just need to learn some rules. Right?
Easy for you.
So it's possible to kosher a used oven for Passover. So ancient oven was a serious issue. In our times, the oven made but basically, yes, it's possible if you set the oven self-cleaning for at least 30 minutes. The best is if you just clean it in a self-cleaning process, and then basically it's good. For sure, if you get a separate one, it's nice. I know people that have a special kitchen for Passover, but regular situation, you can use the regular process of the modern oven. And regarding to a stove, it's basically you clean the stove well, and you put the 3 pots to boiling hot water for about, let's say, 6-8 seconds. Right? It's called in Hebrew hagalah. And then right after that, what you do is you clean the stove well and pour boiling water over the 3-part area, which called Irui Mikli Rishon, and in that way you can clean it. And it's a difference between Sephardim and Ashkenazim, because Ashkenazim require soaking the vessel in cold water for 3 days, and Ashkenazim require changing each water each day for 3 days. And the Sephardim, some of them deem glass vessels are unusable for Passover at all conditions, and some Sephardic authorities say that all glasses vessels are usable without any treatment. So therefore, it's something that you need to ask. How about knife? So regarding to knife, it's possible to kosher it only if the part is not a wooden handle. That it's you need to put it in a very hot water, so you'll be able to use it properly. Now, since we need to dispose of the chametz and kosher it, there is a process. The first, we need to search for chametz. After we finish all the cleaning, and it's a common mistake, cleaning not applied to dust in the window, it's applied to clean to get rid of chametz. So we need to make a special search for the chametz. If there's anything that we need to have, so we sell before Passover, but we search for chametz at the night before Passover, which this year it's Thursday. We have the calendar, they give us the correct time, but in very general term, it's on the evening of 14th of Nisan, after the stars start to come out. I think this year it's about 8:04 or something like that. But however, in unforeseen circumstances, anytime during the 30 days before Passover, you can also search for chametz. Some people have the custom to have 10 pieces of bread. Did you ever heard? When you make the bracha and you put a different piece of bread, as long as you mark them in advance, they feel that you should not make a blessing, a bracha in vain. So you should have pieces of bread. It's also Kabbalistic explanations, but basically what you should do with the 10 pieces of bread found during the search, it's basically you burn them the next day with all the burning of all the chametz. How about the synagogue, your car, your office? Everything is part of the getting rid of chametz, and nothing should stay the chametz. So for example, if you are a student at university, someone asked me, and you live in a dormitory belonging to the university board, and so you're obligated to carry out a searching for chametz the eve of Passover, and the answer is yes, since he is renting his room from the university administration. During this period of time, the room is considering his own, and he is required to check it for the chametz. And it's very important. If you stay in the room during Pesach, he has to check with blessing, and he goes. If you go away for Pesach, you must check on the night before to depart to make the proper blessing. That's important. How about the selling chametz? Selling chametz apply to anything that involve giving the chametz, basically giving the rabbi or someone that they go before the bed in the power of attorney to sell the chametz to a non-Jew. It's apply mainly to something that it's involved with a loss. If you have a company that that's involved with a great loss, things like that. But what they sell has to be, as we mentioned in the past, the sale has to be serious. There's always a lot of questions about partnership between Jew and non-Jew during Passover, but in a very general term, it's an issue, because one of the things that we are forbidden is to drive any joy from any business that involved with income from the chametz. We're not allowed to drive any joy from the chametz in any way. We have to get rid of that. We have to burn the chametz, and the biur chametz, the burning of the chametz, it's performed either by burning it or the fragment, throw it into the water, and that's where you get rid of the chametz. If you find chametz during the Yom Tov Pesach festival holiday, so what you should do, you cover the chametz with the vessel, and you have to burn it after the Yom Tov. This upcoming Friday is the fasting for the firstborn, on the eve of Passover. Originally speaking, the reason for the fasting of the firstborn, it's because we need to commemorate the miracle that they were saved from the last plague, the plague of the Bechorot, the death of the firstborn. And therefore, the firstborn of the mother or of the father, or both, must fast. And the only thing is that we say that if the child is below than 13, then it's obligation upon the father to fast for him. The substitute for the fast is participating in the siyum, completion of the Talmudic tractate. As we said, this Shabbat is called Shabbat Hagadol, Shabbat the Great. Historically speaking, what happened in this Shabbat, we mentioned earlier, it's God performed a great miracle, beginning of Exodus. They took the lamb, which was the holy for the Egyptians, and sacrificed it. The Egyptians were unable to react to the sacrifice. So all of that is the main reason it's called Agdol. There are other reasons. such as the Haftarah of this week ended by the story of Elijah, that they said that it will be a great day, the Messianic era, that Elijah will come. And once I went with the fellow minister. We traveled back from New York, and he sat next to me. And I said to him, you know, we engage with friendly conversation. So I asked him a question. I said, since you agree that, you know, he was Jewish, you're, you know, so you know that in your scripture it's written that you observe all the traditional Jewish customs and commandments. So one of them is on Passover Seder, we drink 4 cups, and then the 5th cup we leave it for Elijah, for the Messianic era. But if you tell me that he was the Messiah and he was part of the Seder performance, how do you reconcile with the issue that he left the 5th cup for the future Messiah? Anyway,
that's a Spinoza question.
It's a good question. I like it.
Did the people of Israel celebrate the Seder night when they are in a desert? So the answer is no. They are commandment to observe it only at the entry to Eretz Israel. That's from the book of Joshua. So the first time they observed Passover, it's in Mitzrayim, but then many years later, it was the Passover of Gilgal when they entered the land. So why it's called Leil HaSeder, the night of the order, the night of the Seder? The answer is because on this night we have a lot of mitzvot, a lot of commandment to fulfill, and therefore a certain order, Seder, was established so that will not be forgotten. That it's an order, is a structure. We can do a lot of additional things, but the Seder, it's in Judaism. You have a structure. You have a point of departure. You have the end. You have a very clear structure. You see it for good. You see it for the other side. You see the process of healing of the passing. 3 days, 7 days, 30 days, 11 months, 12 months, your side. It's a process of healing in Judaism. The same applies to the beauty of the Seder, that you have an order, where it's coming, where it's going, etc. So that's the reason that's called Seder. We have a sign. We have it's a very desirable to invite guests on the Seder night. And in order to share one's happiness with those less fortunate, so we said a very important statement. We said those who are hungry, let's come and join us, and we made it here in a very reasonable price, just to make sure that everyone can join us with the community Seder. And I urge and encourage anyone you know that it's in need to let me know and partake of our community Seder, which this year will be very different, will be Friday night. This upcoming week. We wish this year will be a year of not only liberation, but year of great happiness, good news, good health. Thank you very much.
Amen.